Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. I know everyone's busy, especially if you are an Oracle client. It is their Q4, so you are probably talking to lots and lots of Oracle reps about deals and revenue for the end of May. So this webinar hopefully is really good timing for you. I'm really happy to be joined by Franz Aman from MariaDB. Because Palisade is 100% independent of Oracle, we really get to talk to a lot of different companies and have a lot of different solutions that we can help our customers with. We're not siloed into sort of going down one path. And definitely the MySQL, the MariaDB path is something we're seeing lots and lots of Oracle customers uptake. So we want to talk about how you can break free from Oracle, how you can move to the cloud, how you can adopt new solutions. It's not going to be a tremendously long presentation, so hopefully we're done in 30 minutes. Unless you all have questions, we're going to have a poll question that we ask you at the beginning, and then, like Marissa said, ask away on the chat, and at the end of this, we will answer all those questions that come in. So my name is Craig Guarente. I'm the founder for Palisade Compliance. I've got about 26 years now in Oracle licensing world. I started my career at Oracle in 1995, and I was there until 2011. So I lasted about 16 years. And during that time, I was their global vice president of contracts and business practices, audits, migrations, a whole bunch of organizations around the world, had about 1,000 people working for me. Anything you bought from Oracle went through my organization. And I left and started Palisade. And really, Palisade was to sit on the other side of the table. Like I had been negotiating for Oracle long enough. Now is sit on the other side and help our clients deal with those Oracle contracts and Oracle policies. So Palisade, we've been in business now, I can't believe it, almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years later this year. And we're 100% independent of Oracle. So we're not an Oracle partner. We're not an Oracle reseller. We're not pro-Oracle. We're not anti-Oracle. We're just pro-client. And we help our clients do a whole bunch of things like defend them from Oracle audits, certify ULAs, review their agreements and give them advice on how to reduce their Oracle costs or move to the cloud. Lots and lots of things. Sometimes they want us to negotiate new Oracle contracts, and we do that too. So everything we do is centered around Oracle and our clients' challenges and how to overcome them. We've got about 400 clients around the world now, from Fortune 10 companies to companies that are smaller than us. We're global. So we've got folks in Europe, Asia, and the Americas as well. So that's a little bit about me and Palisade, and I will hand it off to Franz. Welcome,
thank you.
Franz.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Thanks so much for the invitation. And I just love the fact that you came from the dark side and you're now helping people deal with the contract problems you created in your old role.
You're not the first person to point that out to me.
I'm sure. Guilty as charged. So yeah, hello everyone. So my name is Franz Aman and I run marketing at MariaDB. MariaDB is an open source company. And we pride ourselves that we built a database that literally everyone can use, from very small companies to very, very large companies. And we literally have companies of every size. And the database that we're providing, people love not just because it's not Oracle, that certainly is a factor, but it's incredibly easy to use. It's incredibly versatile. And we do say that you can literally run every and any workload on that database. And you can run it in any cloud and at any scale. So the technologies that we're providing, and I'm going to run through that really quickly. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of technical details, but I do want to point out that we support OLTP and OLAP, so transactions and analytics. Oracle certainly has all these things lined up nicely as options, and you can get OLAP columnar from Oracle in memory, but of course that's an extra option. We actually support OLTP, OLAP, hybrid, HTAP, and everything is in the box. You can choose what you want to use, when you want to use it. There are no wrinkles, there are no contracts attached to your choice of workload that you want to run. And we also provide a cloud offering, and MariaDB is also available from AWS and from GCP. Big important difference, they run the community version, we run the enterprise version. And we also give customers the choice of on-prem and in the cloud. Again, very flexible here. The pricing model, of course, is a little bit different. On-prem, you typically have a subscription. In the cloud, it's very much based on what you use. It's pay as you go. But we've transitioned customers seamlessly into the cloud, given them full credit. So I think we're probably one of the easiest database companies to do business with. And when I talk to, for example, Gartner analysts, they always mention that in their inquiries, one of the things that comes up with MariaDB is that the contracts and working with MariaDB is just incredibly straightforward and simple. Now, in terms of the enterprise capabilities we provide, again, everything's in the box, included in the pricing. There are literally no extra options with extra fees. And we've helped many, many customers come from Oracle or other legacy databases to MariaDB. And what they realize is that they are saving a ton of money in the process. Open source very much is a different business model, and it's a very different lifestyle. And of course, the big difference is that we are starting at free, and when you pay a subscription fee, then that comes with support that is unlike anything you experience from Oracle. The first person you ever connect with is a technical person who will solve your problem, not someone who's going to route your problem through a phone tree. And I think I pretty much talked through all the characteristics. I should mention that 75% of the Fortune 500 use MariaDB in some shape or another. And one of our more prominent customers is ServiceNow. They are running in excess of 100,000 MariaDB databases to run their entire product offering, their cloud offering. So we're doing massive scale. We're supporting customers at any and all size. And with that, Craig, let's go to the next slide.
Terrific. Okay, I think our next slide is our poll question. I'm going to pull myself off of video here so we can save some bandwidth. So the question is, what is the main driver to escape from Oracle? Is it price? Is it Oracle pushing you to Oracle's cloud? Is it the contracts and the licensing, or is there something else going on? So we'll give a minute for folks to answer that. And based on what you guys tell us, we'll try to focus our conversation on that. But Franz, before we get the answer, I do have a question for you. You're in marketing, so I have to ask, how did the name MariaDB come about?
Yeah, we get that quite a bit. That's actually courtesy of our founder, Monty Videnius. He originally wrote MySQL. So he's the man behind MySQL. Eventually that ended up with Oracle, and the entire engineering team was super upset with Oracle and basically decided to write true open source, not follow Oracle's black box scenario for how to put releases together. So they basically also were worried that Oracle would just take it over and literally eliminate it as a great open source option. And they actually founded MariaDB at that point. MySQL was named after Monty's daughter, Mai, and MariaDB is named after Monty's other daughter named Maria. Nice. So in both cases, it's actually the first name of Monty's daughters.
I hope he only has 2 kids, because he's going to have to invent something new, the third one. No, that's a great story. And it sounds a lot like the Java, when Oracle bought Sun and they inherited Java. Some of those Java developers weren't too happy that that open source platform went by Oracle. Mm-hmm. All right, so here are the answer, or here is the answer. What's your main driver? So 80% of folks, restrictive licensing and contract terms. So we'll definitely focus on that. And then 20% was being pushed to the cloud. Surprised no one said price. And that's
Yeah,
actually, I'm surprised at that.
I'm very surprised too, because certainly if I see the amount of money that companies are paying to Oracle, sometimes it strangles them literally. And we definitely have customers who come to us because with Oracle pricing, they weren't even able to put some new offerings for their end customers together. So I'm a bit surprised.
You know, we've seen with other presentations, with other vendors, they've done these surveys and they say, 80 to 90% of IT spend is just to keep the lights on. It's not funding innovation. And I think that's the Oracle support spend, right? Or the high license fees is they're trying to keep their lights on and they're not able to innovate. So we hear that all the time, price being a big driver. That's why I was a little surprised, but maybe we should have allowed people to choose more than one answer. Maybe they would have gone, or Franz, maybe this means you can raise your prices, right? So for those of you who are interested in moving away from Oracle, it's interesting when we do these presentations, the Palisade side of these is always the same. I've been saying this for almost 10 years now. And maybe some of the words change around the edges, but the concept is exactly the same. There are three things you always need to move away from Oracle. And we say 1 + 2 = 3. So obviously you need a technical alternative. You are automated, you're using a database, you have computer systems running, you're not moving back to ledger books. So you need an alternative database. In this case, we're talking about MariaDB and how you can replace your Oracle databases with that product. If you don't have a technical alternative, full stop. The other part is you need to be able to reduce your Oracle costs and risks. And this is, those 80% on the last slide who said they were worried about that. That's this, right? So you may have a technical alternative, but if you move to that and then you have to give Oracle more money, you're probably not going to make that move. Or if you move to that technical alternative and now you're putting yourself out of compliance with Oracle and your compliance risk goes up and you're worried about an audit, you're probably not going to make that move. So we start with the technical, we move to the licensing, financial, the contractual. Once you have those two things, the other thing you need internally is momentum. Sometimes we use the word courage, sometimes we use the word guts, but it's really about momentum, right? Because as you're moving away from Oracle, and it might not even be moving away from Oracle, it's just doing something different than Oracle wants you to do, right? It's not like you're going to rip out all your Oracle databases and replace them with MariaDB, especially if you have Oracle ERP running, but it's, hey, let's supplement and not just be a completely red stack and let's, newer applications or newer initiatives, let's run on something else. And we'll continue to use Oracle over there, but not everywhere. That's not something Oracle wants you to do, right? They want Oracle everywhere, from the hardware to the application layers. So, you need that momentum because Oracle is really good at connecting within your organization. They're talking to DBAs, they're talking to business leaders, they're talking to C-level executives, they're talking to board members, right? So it's important that as you're making that move, let's say to a non-Oracle database or a non-Oracle cloud, that you have alignment within your organization, the entire organization, that this is the direction we're going in, right? So because all Oracle has to do is put doubt in a C-level executive's mind or a vice president's mind or your DBAs, things like that. So you want that technical alternative. You want to talk about, you want to understand your contractual risks and obligations, unless you're truly eliminating Oracle, right? If you can say we're getting rid of all of our Oracle, full stop, then you really don't have to worry about number two. But that's usually not what customers, in my experience, are doing. I mean, that many of them would like to do that, but they're unable for whatever reason to actually do that. So it's more of, how do we supplement our Oracle with something else? So these are the three things. 1 + 2 = 3 all the time. Doesn't matter if we're talking database or ERP or cloud or whatever. So what exactly locks you in, right? If we're not talking, I mean, obviously the technology could be a lock-in, right? If you're using Oracle ERP, it's got to run an Oracle database, right? So that's a way, but you see that technology is way down at the bottom of this list, right? It's not the first thing that Oracle will use to lock you in. So there's a whole bunch of other different things that Oracle could do to try to lock you in and protect their revenue stream. So obviously their contracts are one thing, right? So and contracts, and then the fourth one, support policies. Those two really go hand in hand. But let's start with the contracts. The Oracle's really good about getting customers to sign unlimited license agreements, right? Give Oracle a lot of money, and then you could use this database on an unlimited number of processors. It's really not unlimited, but that's what the contract says, for a certain amount of time. And when you do that, when you enter these unlimited license agreements, you've already given Oracle the money, you're much less likely to innovate and use a non-Oracle solution, right? So many customers, in order to progress and adopt non-Oracle solutions, need to exit these ULAs, need to get out of these unlimited license agreements. Audits are obviously something that Oracle will use all the time. And we see audit activity slowed down last year with COVID. That level of activity really went down, but it's back to pre-COVID levels for sure. And we know this only because we see who's hitting our website, who's asking for help, who's signing engagements with us for support. So that part of the business for us was down last year, but it's back up to the same or higher levels than it was before. So audits, a great example here is, and this was not a customer of ours, but the city of Denver. They were audited by Oracle. They decided not to move forward with an Oracle project. And of course, then Oracle audited them. And they ended up spending a few $1 million, not just for Oracle database and a ULA, but for Oracle Cloud. And the great thing about this situation, well, not great for the city of Denver and their taxpayers, but for sort of visibility, is that since it was a government entity, we could get a lot of those emails that went back and forth between the city and Oracle. And you could see basically the city of Denver saying, we don't want to use this cloud. We have no interest in buying it. And Oracle saying, but if you buy it, buying cloud will cost you less money than if you just buy the ULA, right? So Oracle was basically buying the business and saying, listen, you have to buy this cloud or you're going to spend more with us, even though the customer is never going to use it. So audits are definitely, customers move away, they get caught out of compliance, and they have to give more money to Oracle. So you definitely want to make sure as you're in your journey away from Oracle that you're doing it from a very strong position of compliance, right? Because if you're in compliance, you have no fears, no worries. You're going to do whatever you're going to do, what you need to do for the business. Acquisitions is another way Oracle locks in customers, and acquisitions on both sides. Oracle acquires companies, right? Oracle acquired Sun. Sun had MySQL. So that's a way that Oracle will buy up lots of companies. And if you were not an Oracle customer before, you might be, and then they try to tie in, going back to the contracts, locking everything together contractually. Support policies, very difficult to reduce your support costs, even if your usage goes down. Oracle has repricing. They also have matching support policies, which means everything's supported or everything's unsupported. Even if the product is end of life and you're not really getting value from any Oracle support, you're still paying for it. Oracle had a database feature called spatial and graph option, which they used to charge extra for. So lots of customers bought this and they're paying for Oracle support. Last year, Oracle said, you know what, it's free now. It's going to be part of the database. We're not going to charge you extra. But then we asked, are you going to turn off the support cost? Now that it's free, do customers still have to pay support for this free thing? And they're like, oh no, you still have to pay for support. So they really lock you in with support. It's 95% margins. When we think about Oracle costs, it's all about support. right? It's 95% margins. It's a $20 billion a year business. Cloud policies, again, lock you in along with their contracts and where you can deploy Oracle. Some Oracle contracts say you can't deploy in a non-Oracle public cloud. So they really try to lock out their competitors. Hey, we've got this Oracle database license and we want to run on AWS or Google Cloud. You can't because your contract says you can't. So all of these things combined together are what really locks customers in. And definitely technology is one of them, but it is way down at the bottom of the list in terms of things that really hold customers back. Again, and that's our view. We're not a technology company. I mean, we have technology that we've developed and used to do compliance positions, but we don't advise on what's the best technology. And customers who come to us usually have one of those problems at the top of the list. So lots of ways Oracle locks you in. It's a brilliant business strategy that Oracle has been executing for years and years and years. And people are always asking me, how long can Oracle do this to their customers? How long can they treat them like this? How long can they keep auditing? And I'm like, as long as it works, right? I mean, I wouldn't stop and I did it when I was there. So it's really important to understand this. And this is what you are trying to break free from as you're moving away from Oracle. So this is, I think, my last slide. And I just wanted to give you all a few things that you can do right now that will help you in your journey. That number 2, when we say reduce your Oracle costs and risks, like what can you do right now that you don't need a consultant like me to help you with? You can start by reading your Oracle agreements. About 80% of the clients who come to us do not have their Oracle contracts. So it looks to be very easy, read your Oracle contracts, but finding your agreements can often be difficult. And Oracle contracts are multi-layered. You have master agreements, you have orders, you have support orders, license orders, and those are all combined into what I consider your contract estate. So really understanding what's in there. I think we obviously, Palisade, go deeper because even if you don't have them, we know what's probably in there. Also understanding what's not in those contracts is important. What are those policies? One of Oracle's policies that is in all your contracts is their tech support policy. So really understanding that. Matching support, I talked about that. Repricing support are 2 hooks that Oracle has in their tech support policies to prevent you from reducing your support costs. And if you can't reduce your costs, you're not going to try something else, right? If I'm going to have to continue paying Oracle. Now there's ways through this. There's ways to defeat these policies. There's ways to use these policies to your advantage, but really just the first step is understanding them. And then the third thing we say is, if you can avoid having to buy more Oracle by better utilizing what you already have, you should try to do that, right? People always want to spend less on Oracle. And the first step to spending less on Oracle is not to spend more on Oracle. So if you've been an Oracle customer for a long time, you probably are over licensed and out of compliance at the same time, right? You probably have too many, like you can use your licenses in a better way where you need fewer of them, but you might have problems where you've turned on features and functions that you're not licensed for. So you really want to correct that and fix that before Oracle fixes it for you. So those are our 3 recommendations. Read your contracts, understand them, and understand what's not in them. Read and understand tech support policies. You can go do a quick search, Oracle tech support policies. It's on their website. And then optimize your licensing, right? Obviously, we think we can help you with all these 3 things. But if you're going to do something, these are the steps you can do right now and start down that path. So if you do all of these things, then you will have knowledge, and with knowledge comes power, right? Your knowledge might be, oh my, we're out of compliance, we need to fix that. Or it might be, we're in a great position, we can do this other thing, right? It's when people don't know these things that Oracle salespeople are really good at putting some fear, uncertainty, and doubt into your minds so that, maybe I won't make that purchase of that product because I got this big Oracle problem here, whether or not you actually have that Oracle problem. So those are our three recommendations on what clients can do. And Franz, I will pass that off to you now.
Yeah, thank you so much. And certainly we've seen a ton of stories that very much reflect what you just went through. And, we tried to make it really simple from a contract packaging and pricing perspective. Me being in marketing, one thing I always pay attention to is that customers want transparent, predictable pricing. And we have done, I think, a good job in simplifying our product portfolio, where we have community that's free for everyone. Everyone can just run MariaDB community. You can start it free. You can try it out whether you like it or not. And of course, we have an enterprise version that has more features and capabilities, particularly if you run heavy duty production. And that is not to say that you couldn't use MariaDB, the community version of our database, in production. Of course you can. And there's tens of thousands of companies out there that are running MariaDB community in production. So there's no contract for that. There's no wrinkles. You can do that. You can make sure that we're meeting your requirements. And then you can come to MariaDB for a subscription. And the enterprise option adds in some additional capabilities that are really cool to have for production environments. And you can license it in two different ways, either by node, where we are not going to bother counting vCPUs and nickel and diming you. Or you can say, well, I have very spiky workloads up and down, and a vCPU model actually is a good option, because then we don't pay peak throughout. And we give you that option too. So you can decide between node-based and vCPU-based. Then we offer MariaDB, the enterprise product, in the cloud. And there you pay just for what you use. If you turn the database off, you don't pay for it. So it's very much a cloud model, pay-as-you-go model. And I think that's super straightforward, super simple, and again, no wrinkles attached. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. And so, what I see a lot is that companies are super happy when they've made the switch. And we obviously are a solid technical solution that can be a technical alternative. We have Oracle compatibility features. I'm not going to go into any of the technology, but again and again, we see that companies are being pushed today to the cloud very aggressively, and we saw 20% of you have that issue. And Oracle's expectation certainly is that they will make more money with you in the cloud than they made with you on premise. So typically, you can expect that the price over time will certainly go up, and then you can't really go to another cloud. You really have no alternative. With MariaDB, we offer our own cloud, and we believe that we have the best open source based cloud out there in terms of total cost of ownership, simplicity, and not having a scenario where you have, again, tons of options and bits and pieces that once you add it all up, you get a sticker shock, or something we've heard a lot about, Amazon Aurora, where you have no control over storage IOPS, storage performance, and you then get these surprise bills for, like in Pinterest's case, literally millions of dollars just for I/O to the storage. And these are metered costs that then you just have to pay. And with us, everything is, you control the settings, so you can dial in performance, and the pricing's predictable. There's none of these surprises. And again and again, we see that customers, they love the flexibility and simplicity of the business model, but then they also want to take that benefit for the entire corporation. And we have one customer who literally, they made a decision to go away from Oracle because of um, the business practices and just the cost. A big bank, the biggest lender in Southeast Asia, Development Bank of Singapore, they needed to go to a digital model supporting mobile banking, supporting a much more flexible ATM network end to end. But they could not afford it, largely because of these huge ongoing infrastructure costs to Oracle. So they decided to move away from Oracle, and they did a really smart thing. And Craig already mentioned what's going to happen when you're trying to move away. First thing is you get an audit. They budgeted the audit into the migration cost. And they just budgeted for an audit that they expected. They put an extra $2 million aside just for that. And of course, the audit came and they paid a substantial amount. But in the end, they moved to MariaDB. They saved 90% of their operational database cost, and they moved all their mission critical applications, everything to MariaDB. The entire bank runs on MariaDB. Really nice story. And I always love the register. They just have the punchiest headlines, and they're the most aggressive in their reporting. And they wrote a story about one of our customers moving to our cloud, and they were just delighted in terms of capabilities, performance, but also the support model. And we have an option, we call them SkyDBAs, and they're literally virtual members of your team. And if you don't have a huge DBA staff, or you need a little bit of extra help to help you with database problems, then you can tap these resources. And unlike other clouds where you get the self-service, but then self-service it is, and the support in terms of real database support isn't very good. Here you get expertise from the source, and we help you with Oracle. We help you with the Oracle transition, of course, but we also help you with real consultative support and coach you how to do it, how to use the least amount of cloud hardware, and make it just a really great total cost of ownership experience. So for anyone who's interested, we do have an offer on the next slide, because we don't want anyone to jump into the cold water without any idea of what they're getting into.
And Franz, can I jump in here for 1 second?
Of course.
Yeah, I remember, just to add on to what you were saying, Oracle's CEO, Safra Katz, and before her, Mark Hurd, who passed away a while back, they have said that, because they talk to their investors, right? They're always trying to get that stock price up. An Oracle customer who moves to Oracle Cloud will pay 3 to 4x to Oracle what they're paying now. So think about that. If you're paying $1 million a year to Oracle for database support, Oracle's goal is that you pay $3 to $4 million to Oracle. Now, granted, you'll get more stuff. You'll get to take your license on their cloud and all that fun stuff. But that's a big shocker, I think, when people are looking at their Oracle spend, and then we tell them that, and it's not us saying that. That's Oracle saying that, right? So this is their model. But can I ask you, how big is MariaDB's audit team?
That would be 0.
Now, how do you get customers to buy your stuff if you're not auditing them?
Well, for us, it's all about adoption and a great customer experience. I mean, if customers are happy using your product, they're going to use more of it. It's a really simple model, and it works really well.
Yeah, and I will just, before I'll flip the slide for you in a second, I'll just say that the bank you referred to, who brilliant for them to budget for an audit, but next time they should just budget for Palisade's audit defense, because they would not have spent $2 million with Oracle.
Yeah.
They had us helping them for sure. That would have been, we'd save them so much money. But it's really good that they were thinking about that, right? That exit cost of leaving Oracle. there's a cost, right? It could be a mental cost. It could be a financial cost. It's up to you. Oracle's not going to make it easy. You have to take ownership of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And hey, that was a number of years ago. If we would have known of you, we absolutely would have pointed them your way for sure, no question. Because there are things that can be done. I mean, you're not just the victim, and it kind of goes to the motto of the call. And you guys are just doing a fabulous job, sitting down with people, going through their contracts, and figuring out what can be done. And that's really, really helpful, not just financially, but just in terms of the time it takes. I mean, I've seen customers, the time they spend on just pulling the materials together for an audit.
Yep.
I mean, it's like you tear your hair out, and all the logs and all the details and everything. I mean, the time you lose, it's just mind-boggling.
It really is. It really is. One of our clients, the only client ever to take Oracle to court over their audits was Mars, the candy company. And they were our customer. They are our client still. That was a few years ago. And they put together 200,000 pages of information and gave it to Oracle. And Oracle's like, that's not enough. And that's sort of where everything blew up. And they had to take Oracle to court. I mean, that's an effort. I mean, it's a full-time job sometimes, right? So, your first goal is you don't want to be audited, right? So staying in compliance is a great way to do that. An audit is just, it can be a complete drain for your organization. It distracts you from what you need to do. And unfortunately, lots of people just pay Oracle to go away when it comes to an audit.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in that case, if I recall that correctly, because there was a bit of write-up on it that I saw at some point, they did not end up going to court, which a lot of us were really bummed over. In the end, they did settle with Oracle, and I assume for substantially less than Oracle had ever asked for. But I'm not aware of anyone having a big public blowout or court battle. And even in the case of Mars, that was very high profile and did hit the PR public scene. I don't think they actually they settled, right?
So, here's what's in the public record that we can talk about, right? Because it was in all the filings. They were audited by Oracle, and that's when they hired us, and we gave Oracle all kinds of information. Oracle wanted more. Oracle wanted more. Mars refused to give them what they wanted, which is around virtualization. And Oracle sent them a breach notice, basically saying, we're going to turn off all of your licenses if you don't do what we want in 30 days, which could put a company out of business, right? This is happening now in South Africa. Eskom is, I think, the
Yes.
national electricity firm, right? Where Oracle is pulling the plug, literally pulling the plug or figuratively pulling the plug on the electric company. So Mars is like, we're not in breach. You better take this away. We cannot have you terminate our licenses. And Oracle refused to do it. So Mars marched into federal court. I think it was on a Thursday, filed with the federal court in San Francisco, to order an injunction against Oracle from exercising their right to terminate and wanting it to go to trial. So basically saying, keep everything as it is. We have those licenses. We're going to court. 2 or 3 days later, Mars withdrew their complaint, right? I can't get into what happened and why and whatever. That was years ago. Mars is still a client of ours. So obviously they were happy with us and what we did. But I think there are a lot of people who wanted that to go in front of a jury to see not only Oracle's audit practices, but their practices on licensing and virtualization, right? So, but that wasn't the right thing for Mars. So their business is making great candy, not defending, not leading the charge for Oracle liberation.
But of course, it made sense to stand up. And I think that's the message here, right? So you don't have to just take it. And we also see that Oracle certainly has been losing a lot of market share. If I go back 10 years, the top 3 database companies had 84% of the relational database market. Today, actually last year, it was 55%. This year, I'm expecting that the top 3 database companies will be below 50%. And the rest of us will have nibbled away substantially at that whole big market share. So things are changing. That's the good news. And yeah, and again, just to make sure that everyone knows what they're getting into, we put an Oracle migration assessment together. It's a really solid practice. You have to run a couple of things on your databases just to provide some information around your data types and what have you, because then we can understand how compatible we are with your implementation. So we can talk about technical issues, what have you. We talk to you about a whole bunch more things, your applications, your needs, your requirements. And then at no cost, we give you a really solid analysis of what the migration will take. And we also will talk with you about ROI. And we believe that's a good best practice to just also give you the opportunity to size things up and understand how dependent or not dependent on some of the Oracle features or specifics of your implementation you are. So we wanted to put that out there for free for anyone on the webinar or who's listening to the recording. And please take us up on that. All right.
That is terrific. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think that's the end of our official presentation. We have our contact information for Franz and MariaDB on the left, for Palisade Compliance on the right. If you're looking for more information on their services, please reach out to them. If you need help with Oracle, don't wait for the fire to call in the firefighters. Call in Palisade Fire Marshals, who can make sure that you don't have a fire with Oracle. Having said that, now is the time for questions. So, Marissa, what do we have from the audience?
So we actually got one question in earlier before the webinar, and that is, Franz, I think this will be directed more towards you. Are there any automated migration tools available for migration from Oracle to MariaDB?
Yes, absolutely there are. So there's automation. There are also compatibility features that we have where, just to give you an example, PL/SQL. If you have PL/SQL, there's a substantial part of PL/SQL you can just run on MariaDB unchanged, and you don't have to do anything. Moving the data is largely automated. The areas where typically you have to think a little bit harder and you have to probably spend some time is the application migration. But again, this is what our assessment's about. So to get a really good deep dive and understanding of what it's going to take, I would recommend that assessment. And it's very lightweight in terms of the work you have to do. And, we set up a session, we talk through the requirements, and then you get a really solid answer that doesn't leave you speculating as to what it might cost or take.
Great, thank you. And those were all of the questions we had for today.
Well, we must have
All right.
answered everybody's questions, Franz. Well, thank you, everybody. Franz, thank you again for joining us and giving your insights on MariaDB. We really appreciate that. Marissa, thank you for coordinating and setting this all up. And most of all, thank you, everybody out there in the audience. We will record this. We will have it online. We will have it available for people who couldn't make it live. So good luck, everybody, with Oracle's Q4, and we will see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.